Hi, parents. We're going to have a meeting real soon. As you know, before every meeting and after, I do supplemental videos on things I won't specifically cover in the session. But here's a time where there's something I will be covering when I talk about scholarships this week in the session. I always talk about the different types of ways to get funding. And I was just looking at those few graphs when my sister emailed me and sent me a very important article that comes up every year. And it's a part of our presentation, but it's a part I don't emphasize as much, but I better emphasize this year because of some things going on inside of schools. We're having severe financial trouble, colleges. And I said I would let you know COVID effects a little more. But I thank God for my sister-in-law. You don't know I have three sisters, three wonderful sisters. But then there's Susan, who is in a separate grade category. And she sent me a wonderful, very interesting article. She apparently is mentoring a young lady who is doing an enrichment program that probably is similar to mine. But here's a situation that comes up every year, and I'm going to see if I can't get into this a little bit. The title of the article in Campus Logic, you can find it online at Campus Logic. I've looked at that site quite a bit over the years since dilemma issues. I've written them letters about articles, and I think I'll write Mr. Downs a letter here today to help him a little bit with this. Was there some things in the article that are a little concerning? Let's see if I can state the problem as I see it. The problem that's put forward here is one that's real. That's not the issue. It's if you get a financial aid package from a college, it has loans and it has grants from the school in it. And the university has a responsibility, which this article says is seems to make it seem like it's from the law, that if you get outside scholarships, you have to tell them about it. And when you do, which is true, you do. And you could get in a lot of trouble not telling them. So, as a man of God, I'm not going to tell you not to tell them. You'll tell them about it. And what they might do is apply it to the grants and reduce the amount of grants. So if you got a $40,000 grant, you get a $5,000 scholarship. Now it's a $35,000 grant. And so it remains neutral, your financial aid award. You don't get the money on top of that money from the university. It's especially true with private institutions, but I've seen it with state schools. I'll tell you why in a minute. Um, this is a real phenomenon, and that's the article that's presented here. Winning a scholarship isn't awesome until it isn't. So under the situation I just presented, you didn't really win a scholarship. Let's get into this a little bit. I'll just kind of it goes. The first part of the article goes over how we encourage students to look for scholarships, and I do too. But what goes up must come down. Imagine this: a student earns a $5,000 scholarship from the Rotary Club for the upcoming year. That student notifies their college or university that a check is forthcoming from the scholarship organization. Student expects to see this $5,000 award stacked on top of the grant or scholarship, and then student thinks they'll owe 5,000 less. Instead, the institutional scholarship gets reduced. And the reason why it gets reduced by 5,000, and that was added to the external, the same $5,000. So 5,000 came in, then they reduced the scholarship. This results in a zero net gain covering the student's costs for the academic year. Adjusting the financial aid package in this manner by colleges and universities is called scholarship award displacement. All right. First of all, if a student has a lot of need-based funds, you know, from the federal government, those aren't touched. In addition, if the student has need-based awards from the university, typically that's where you get into the issue because you don't have the same financial need once you present this $5,000. And so the university just adjusts the estimated family contribution and they do take it from the scholarships and you don't see the effect of that award. Now, first of all, not every school does that. I have schools I know that take it from the loans. It is removed from the loans, and that is good for the student long term. As you know, I don't like to see a lot of debt. So that's one thing. It's not true at every school. So this article makes it seem like this is the way it is at every school, and it is not true at every single school. It also depends on the estimated family contribution. If the university has not taken care of all the unmet need, I mean, if there was need that the student had above and beyond this that the school could not meet, then they will pile it on top of the student and help that student out to get to the university. All right. They will give them they'll let them have those funds. But you see this phenomenon with families who are making above, say, typically for private schools, they're above the 60 to 70,000. Some are 100 and $200,000 that are seeing this displacement. So that's the other thing I want to say. It's not true in that regard for every single family. That's very, very important. And there's one more thing I need to say about this paragraph. Again, I'll read the paragraph again. Instead, the institutional scholarships and grants get reduced or offset by the same $5,000 that was added in the external award, results in zero net gain. All right, well, consider this. If a student's already getting full financial aid coverage and there's taxpayer money from the state in the form of a state grant, I'll just call it state, every state has them, state grant, and they're getting full coverage for school, I mean, as a taxpayer, most people would agree that the taxpayer shouldn't pay. And so in some states, such as California, they will reduce the Cal Grant under those conditions if a scholarship shows up. But then the next year, the student gets need-based money and everybody's okay with it. So it's only when there's middle-class families or really upper middle-class families where there's not much financial need and the EFC, expected family contribution, is very high, meaning that they think you can afford it, then they will do the displacement. And it all goes back to the colleges we put on the list. I think sometimes when college lists are not balanced, you get schools that are most likely, when you get to the $70,000 schools, they will displace in a minute because they're dealing primarily with students whose families are making $100,000, $150,000, $200,000, even 80 or 90,000. You see that occur. You do see it above 60 actually. And again, it's because the ability to pay on the part of the student is greater with those schools. All right, so now I've taken care of that. But there's a deeper answer to this question that I make sure I give my families too, and that is how to look for scholarships. You need to ask the Rotary Club, how do you award before you even apply for the scholarship? So you're not surprised by it so late in the process. You need to actually ask them, hey, do you allow me to get the check written to myself? Because the minute that check is written to you, it becomes a sponsorship. It's not a scholarship. And this, the last time I checked, this is a free country. A bunch of people can get together and decide to give somebody something to go to college. And that's what happens. Now, but a lot of these scholarship committees are not aware of that. And somebody who was set up the scholarship years ago has said it goes to the school because those are the days when schools didn't cost as much. This wasn't as critical of an issue. So you should ask the Rotary Club or ask the scholarship people when you're shopping for the scholarship, are we allowed to get the scholarship written, the scholarship check written to us or the student and not to the college? All right. That needs to be done early on during the scholarship hunting process. That's something that needs to be done. So I would do that right away, early on. It's very important. Let me see if I can explain that again a little more to you. Let me turn off my sound. I'm sorry. Let me make sure I say that really clear. When we're building our scholarship list of scholarships to go for, we should ask those scholarship awardees, is there a possibility of getting that check written to me? Now, sometimes when you read it online, they'll tell you. the check is written to the student, and you can assume it's more of a sponsorship. Just to kind of review, there's 4 ways students get money for college from third parties. Number one is scholarships, but those don't go to the student. They almost always are written to the school, sometimes unless you talk to them. Then we have sponsorships. Now, at our program, we have a couple of sponsors. We have the West Angeles sponsorship, which is given by our church. And I know, Susan, you remember that. But we also have the Gwen Thomas sponsorship. And my wife and others and I are going to put together some sponsorships. But we're making sure there's sponsorships and then we can set the rules for how they get the check. And it goes to them. For example, we don't award the check till after they start school, all of that. But you can do that. But that's not a scholarship. It's a sponsorship. And you just say it in all your documents, that's a sponsorship. And in every state, there's that allowance for gifts. Number two, that brings up, there's gifts. Relatives can get together and give students gifts, right? How's that any different than a sponsorship? It's no different. It's a bunch of people coming together to award, okay? Sure, if it's a nonprofit in some states, they have more leeway to do it, like I think it's New Jersey. But in California here, when the student gets the check themselves, it's a sponsorship. All right, so find out about that, and make sure that your student is the students know about that, and that they look for scholarships where they can do it, and then look for providers that are willing to provide, or do provide sponsorships. Because if it's a sponsorship, here you go. You do not have to report it to the school, no more than it's a gift. Now, where it gets a little interesting, you'll get third parties that want to help you out and want to pay this. They'll say, hey, I'll pay the students' tuition for them. Just let me know and give me the bill. The problem with that, and this came up in the Morehouse situation when that fellow agreed to pay all the loans of the students. It was technically a violation of the state law in Georgia. But anyway, actually for the universities, it was a tough University of Morehouse in that case. It was a little tricky figuring out how to do that because some kids got more, some got less. It was that whole area. But let me see if I can elucidate that. Let's say I go in and I pay one of your students his tuition for them as a good Samaritan. The universities have been known to call that a third party payment. I know GW does that. They consider that a scholarship. And they will then turn around and say, even though so-and-so came in and paid, we analyzed your financial aid award, you still owe $2,000 or $1,000 because we were able to shift the money around, but we couldn't shift it all. So remember that third party is not the way to go either. That person should be told, wait a minute, let's set up a sponsorship. And you can give to any one of our students any year, and they'll apply for it in an orderly manner, and they'll get a sponsorship from you. And they'll say whatever, they won't care as long as you tell them who got it or whatever. They won't care. But that money is given directly to the student. Boy, I sure hope that helps. And this article needs to be updated because it goes on to state the law. It says in the article, if you go on, the law requires colleges and universities to adjust. No, the law does not require it. Colleges and universities do it. And maybe in certain circumstances is where we get into, he can say the law requires, I don't know, but they don't have to do it. In fact, a lot of schools do not do that. They will let them stack that award. Now, keep in mind, I already told you that there's some situations where it will be stacked. If a student has a lot of financial need at a college that costs a lot of money, they get a scholarship, that school is not going to displace. They will not do that. It's based on the EFC. Let's see what else. It says, however, the decision to reduce the grant scholarships instead of loans of federal work study when a student has a financial need is a choice made by the institutions. Sure, it's made by the institutions in cases where the EFC is high, the estimated family contribution from the FAFSA. I know it's confusing, but when a FAFSA is submitted, an estimated family contribution is determined. And if it's really a high EFC, then of course they'll displace. But this article says nothing about EFC, nothing about the why and why this happens and how to get around it. I'm going down the article. Let's see. Tactics for stopping displacement. Some providers have supplemented their checks with paper letters to prevent displacement. You can't do that. I think the universe will still do what they think they should do based on the EFC, on the FAFSA, where they ask for funds to be returned to the provider if the school will displace the scholar. Others have tried send their scholarship checks to institutions later. Okay, what they don't have here is the scholarship organizations that write checks directly to the student. Now, I will say when the student gets that money, like they say they get it for this fall, they get it in the summer, it then becomes income for 2021. The students don't make the money anyway. Come on now. It's not going to affect the FOFs at all for the next year, and they'll still get the same. But they say here both tactics have been unsuccessful, leaving external providers and their donors frustrated. So they don't discuss in here uh, sponsorships at all. The next article about Maryland passed a law preventing scholarship award displacement. But again, this is all states can do that. They can write all laws they want. Uh, but again, does not bind private colleges, universities, and state because they can't tell private schools what to do, right? They've got to voluntarily agree to displace 3-year grant. I saw all that, but I think all of that, depending on the EFC, is not necessary if a student has enough financial need. But this all brings us to the point of why does college cost so much and all that. I'll send you, Susan, a link to my video on that. And that's really the root cause of this, that college costs too much. And it's getting worse. It's way worse than even when DJ went to my sister. And it's way worse than it's been before parents of my program. It's just way worse. And I'll be willing to answer any questions any of you have on this. You know how to reach me. Just call, text, or email me, and I'll talk about your situation. Now, remember, in our session on Sunday, we're going to talk about how to read a financial aid award, and a lot of this will come up again. I do bring it up in the view graphs where I cover that. All right. All right. Thank you all very much. God bless you. I hope that helps, Susan. It was really a very great question. You got me thinking about that at a time where I'm preparing to actually talk about it. And it's something that comes up every year. Thanks very much. Bye-bye now.